Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Onion Soup. Today, we have a wonderful guest, international keynote speaker, publicity and business consultant, CEO, neuroscientist, Dr. Andrea Adams, the woman who has the multi-billion-dollar Rolodex and is a super connector. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad you're here, Dexter. This is going to be so much fun.
Thank you. I'm really, really excited to just have you here. So let's just dive right into it. As a neuroscientist, how do you utilize, neurofeedback and neurolinguistic programming and hypnotherapy to help your clients?
Well, it's really funny. Before I knew all of this stuff, I always wondered how our mind processes information and why we believe what we believe, and our constructs of what is reality and what's
Mhm.
possible for us. And I always was enthralled with things like magic and illusion, because the times when we look at art or different puzzles, it's all illusion on what we see and what we know. And then I have a background in law enforcement. So then it was this idea of what we think we saw or what we recall happened isn't always what everybody else saw or what they saw happen. And so this ability to tap in to learn more about the brain and the mind of how we think and how we process has allowed me to have a different connection with clients and allow them to see themselves and to see how they show up in the world and how the world shows up to them differently. So that way we're more open to the possibilities of how we show up and how we sound and how we behave and how other people reflect on those behaviors and actions and words and accept them. And that can help them with doing business better, with being more enrolling, to being able to charge more money and have monetization, to having really close, affectionate personal relationships and business relationships. So it's really fun because it taps into everything.
For sure. So I have a quick question actually, because I talk to people about the nature of reality, but also we all perceive reality slightly differently. So
Mhm.
how do you help your clients not just realize the way that they're perceiving reality, but how they integrate that into their lives?
Well, I see that in a couple different ways. So one of them is there's a reality that we are aware of or we believe we're aware of. And then there's the reality that we can manifest and create.
Mm,
So if we are talking positively about things and speaking in gratitude and switching everything to be positive, positive just tends to naturally attract to it. And I usually explain that to people with batteries. So, or magnets,
mm,
more with magnets is, if you have two magnets and you put them together and how they repel each other, but when you flip them around, how they'll and stick together. And
mm,
so you want to attract the things that you want into your life. So that's where, I have an exercise for kids that I do with parents. And like, I call it no crying over spilt milk. And so when I'll literally create water that looks like milk, and then I'll spill it and then show them a different way of reacting, like, oh no, it's spilled. We get to clean it up. Let's get a rag. Let's make sure everything's clean and tidy. Oh, look, everything's cleaner than it was before, because
right.
there's no one to fault or to blame for. Where
Mhm,
often what happens is you're like, you spilled the milk. I mean, unless the kid took it and went, on purpose. you know, Nobody spilt it. It just is spilt. So directing that away from people allows that. So I use that as an analogy. And then so our
mhm,
reality, maybe there might be some negativity going on or some things that are that way, and acknowledging what we see as real, and then saying, what would we like that to be instead? And let's change how we react to it. And then let's think of the people that are involved, instead of saying that person is a troublemaker or that person behaves like that. We now see that it's the behavior and not the person. We say, oh, I wonder what might be going on that created that. Let's see how I
Yeah.
can be helpful to see that in a different light and to see the person as what they could be instead of how they've been.
For sure. So when we're talking about manifestation and creating your own reality, and you're talking about being able to recognize the behavior itself and then asking what about that behavior brought this up.
Mhm.
So do you agree with the idea that we're all constantly, consistently manifesting, but sometimes we're consciously doing it, but other times, or most times, we're subconsciously or unconsciously doing it, and that's why we might be attracting to the negativity in our lives.
Absolutely, and it's funny because some things we're manifesting and attracting, definitely subconsciously because
Mm,
of what's in our world, what's in our commercials, and what's in the things that we do. So, like those of you who are watching the program right now and physically looking at, like behind me, I have nothing behind me, so there's not a lot of things behind you that are influencing you because it's plain gray. So, if someone were to see what we have as an influence, like what's behind us or what we see, all the biases are always around us. So, for example, even though I have a plain gray background and a red top on, um, if someone were to ask you something, you might automatically start talking about scarlet and gray and Ohio State because you're thinking football colors because you were seeing red and gray just my background today, even though I'm not representing any particular football team. And at the same time, they might start saying, or, oh, I was having this deep feeling in my heart and in my
mm,
chakras. And that's because they're looking at a chakra image behind you. And then that later influences how we think and how we behave about something. And we weren't even aware of what we were looking that's behind us. Like if they're looking at the screen, they're also looking at what's around us and what we see on our phone, all those commercials, all to be, hungry for pizza or want to go out to eat because you've been seeing food images or, certain pair of socks and now your feet want socks. We're constantly bombarded with images and thoughts and ideas that are not our own.
right, 100%. And it's interesting because when you brought up the chakras, and my first thought was the root chakra. And a lot of times when people are surrounded by red or attracted to red, it has to do with their either need to ground or need to share that grounding and being rooted with
Mm.
others. So, in what ways do you use neuroscience in your practice as far as hypnotherapy? Like, just tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, hypnotherapy has different modalities as well, just within that word or within that construct. So, as a hypnotherapist, so I can use hypnotic language to help people in a different direction from one thing to the other. So, for example, when I was talking about the spilt milk, I was directing people to think about I said, "Oh, how fun." I made it like it's fun. Now somebody spilled was fun. That's actually in those words, it can also be hypnotic in such a way. The tone of my voice could be changed or inflected to encourage somebody to think a different direction. Now, I can't make anybody do anything, but I
Mm,
can have an influence. But their internal core that makes the decisions will either go, "Oh yeah, I want that and I buy into it and I believe that," or it'll go, that ain't how I think," and it'll automatically push it away. So there's a myth there for a lot of people when they hear hypnotherapy. There might be a fear because they're thinking, "Oh, you're going to mind control me." We can't
mm,
control your mind. You control your mind. We just guide you and it's with your permission. So like if you want to stop smoking or you want to
mm,
overcome, like I've had clients who, they get to a 6 or 7 figure and then they can't get to the 7 or 8.
mm,
There's, different techniques with our language and with hypnotherapy to overcome those blocks. And those blocks might be limiting beliefs like maybe your parents said, or maybe, in
mm,
school or something you read that people with money are bad. And
mhm,
so you thought, well, I can't have money because I'll be bad. Or somebody's made some kind of belief in your family or around you, the people that were important, that made you think that it was wrong or maybe you didn't deserve it. We can release those limiting beliefs and those limiting emotions so that you no longer have those present because those are old stories that no longer serve you.
right. So I'm curious about when you're talking about releasing those blockages, like how do you go through and reprogram the mind?
So, I call it successful mind mastery. So,
Mm,
by using different words and different language and allowing yourself to see what stories that you have inside of you. And there's different techniques. There's time techniques. There's timeline therapy. There's
mm,
um, uh, EMDR, EMDI. Those are, even though they're separate than hypnotherapy, they're
mm,
different tools within that school to allow us to access what's going in. And sometimes it's simple as a metaphor. Um, I'm trying to, all of us, isn't it funny? All of a sudden, when you want something, it sometimes, because we're trying hard to get it out, it like won't come out. And then if you just relax into it, it just shows up for us. So a metaphor might be something simple, similar, simple like, a watched pot never boils. And that means when you're putting all your focus on something, um, and it seems oxymoronic sometimes because you'd think if we
mm,
put our focus on it, it happens. Why is it not happening? But you're so determined that that's the outcome that you want. You're not allowing things just to happen. And if you were busy doing something else, the pot boils like that. And so it seems faster, that time will move faster. And also
mm,
the stories that you're holding, like if we take you into a hypnosis and we just ask your unconscious mind and subconscious mind if they have permission to work together to release these, negative emotions or negative beliefs, and then have you go back in time and let us know, what is it? Is it in this lifetime? Did it happen in the womb? Did it happen in a past life, or is it past generational? So not everybody believes in those things, and so it's funny sometimes. Some clients are like, "Oh yeah, it happened in a different lifetime," and then they'll go, "Wow, I didn't even believe in that, but that's what I felt moved to say." And then other
yeah,
people are like, "Yeah, that's weird. My subconscious is like, that's a filter, not going to allow me to take that there." And that's okay too, because often then I just said, "Well, let's just imagine it's a game. And if
mhm,
this were a game, where is it?"
mm,
And then we're still able to access it. So if this were just a game and we were able to see, is it close to you, away from you, or does it belong to somebody else? And then now what can we do to release that? And then we just go back and look at it. And what's really cool is we don't often, a lot of times people think, oh, then I got to relive the moment or go back into the story. And that's actually not what I want people to do. I have them stay up above it, the situation, and look down on it. I don't want them to drop in and live it. There's no need for that. And sometimes we don't remember. We know our subconscious will protect us from
I
things.
know that there are different techniques for hypnosis. So I was curious about how you pick the technique, but it seems like you allow the subconscious to drive the conversation.
Yeah, it's the client that drives it. For example, if someone's saying, well, I'm not really sure I want this, and they may even do this motion. They'll go, well, they want this, but this keeps happening. Chances are they have a parts integration. And so then that's taking two different parts and figuring out, how can we bring them together so that they can see what the common goal or purpose is of what they're trying to do. And often that's when, when they say between a rock and a hard place, but there's actually usually a middle ground. Or when people are arguing about something, often it's not, the argument is distracting them from what the common goal really is. And we
Mhm.
can do that for anything. If you look at politics, when people are talking about, Republican or Democratic, or abortion, no abortion. The core of what they're arguing for is they want people to be safe and smart and make smart choices and to care about people. And it's funny how you can take something that's so drastically extreme on either side and find that there is common ground of what they want for people as a whole.
Right, that's usually what it is. At the end of the day, it's all about
Mhm.
love,
Yeah,
and everybody wants
exactly.
to be loved in some shape, form, or fashion, and we
All
just
we need is love.
right, and we just have different ways of expressing that, and we have different ways of what we think that should mean.
Yeah, definitely so.
So, one of the questions that I had was honestly just the power of influence, And when we're talking about hypnosis, earlier you were saying how people think you're trying to control their minds, but really it's about getting that person to influence themselves. So, what is the power of influence? So, we were saying, so what is the power of influence? Because oftentimes people think that when they go through hypnosis, they're, like you said earlier, they're afraid of being controlled, but really we're getting them to influence themselves. So,
Yeah.
what is the power of that influence?
Well, part of that influence is like if somebody says that they want to be a non-smoker, do they really want to be a non-smoker, or are they deciding that they want to be a non-smoker because like their wife or their children are mad at them, or they know somebody who is sick and so they're, or maybe their doctor said, and so it's not something that they really want, but it's not something that they know they have to.
Right.
So realistically, if someone really wants to quit smoking, they can make the decision, I'm now a non-smoker, and be that.
Well, we're going to take a really quick commercial break. All right, so welcome back, everybody. And we've been talking a lot about consciousness and the subconscious. What is consciousness?
Consciousness is what we're aware of, what we know is happening, and again, it's a belief of what we know, and it's a belief of what we think we see and what we is present to us. So, if you've ever seen those art projects, where like, do you see the young maiden or the old wise woman? That whatever we see is what our consciousness is able to see, and sometimes we can't see what's right in front of us. If you've ever lost your keys and they're laying on the table next time you walk through, chances are nobody was playing a trick on you. There wasn't some, third party in the world or a poltergeist putting the keys there. It was simply that you weren't able to see them in the view that you were in the moment. So our consciousness is interesting because it's really a filter of what we think we see and know.
So, when you say it's awareness, what do people mean when they say you need to increase your awareness?
Well, there's different ways that we can increase our awareness. So one of them is education, because the more you know, I always say the more you know, the more you don't know, the more you realize you don't know. And your awareness is and this I really learned in law enforcement. In law enforcement, like even though I'm talking to you and I'm focused on you, I'm aware of what's going on either side of me. I need to be aware of what's going on. And I've been out of law enforcement for a long time. I'm able to shut that off at times because I don't need, there's nothing happening over here because there's a wall. And there's nothing happening over here because there's space in the room. So I don't have to worry about someone coming up or anybody coming up behind me or anything happening. However, when we're out and about in the world, we do need to be cognizant of what's going around us. So I'm sure you've seen drivers or seen people that are right beside you and you wave
Mhm.
and they can't see you. And you think, how can they be functional in that car? They are not awakened and aware of what's going on that is just in their eyesight, let alone aware of what's happening in the world or maybe beyond the world, that's this concept of, string theory and quantum physics and all this stuff that we're not present to in the moment all the time. And so that to me, there's different levels of awakened as well. And that's where that consciousness happens for me. One of them I can teach everybody right now is how to go into Hakalau. Hakalau is a Hawaiian term. And so if you just to look ahead, keep your chin forward and raise your eyes 20%, like you're looking up, find a spot on the wall or ceiling or close to the ceiling and
Mhm.
just look at it while we're talking here like this. You don't want to try to look up into your eyebrow. That actually can be painful, but you just look at that spot and all of a sudden you'll notice, often I'll have people put their hands out to their sides. Now I can't put my hands out because you can't see me on camera here, but I have them put them clear out and wiggle their fingers while they're looking at that spot. And eventually they'll notice that they can move their fingers clear out out and actually put them way back behind them so they actually can't see their fingers, but yet they're aware of what their fingers are and what they're doing. And often it's, like when mothers say, "Oh, I have eyes in the back of my head like a mom," that's kind of what we're referring to. And that's kind of a law enforcement thing too. You can see things that you can't see because you have become aware of sight, sounds, action, movement, energy, a sensation, your sixth sense, whatever else might be out there. You've opened yourself up to the possibility of feeling that.
That's fascinating. And what's really interesting to me about that is I was actually in the Army for several years, many moons back.
Mm.
And I would say that a lot of my awareness came from that because they do teach you to be hyper aware of situations. I do constantly put my back to walls so the way it's easier for me to be aware of things. I
Yes.
think that's just natural, something that they teach you, just in those fields. And my father was also a Marine, police officer, fireman. So he taught me all those things growing up as well.
No,
So
it's funny.
fascinating.
People will refer to things like that and they'll say, "Oh, well, maybe those people are ADD or ADHD." And maybe so. And at the same time, those skills are phenomenal that you can pay attention to multiple things. And
Mhm.
I get it. You come in and out of paying attention. And sometimes it really is hard to focus, especially if you're looking out for other people's safety and whatever else is happening, especially if you're in a public place and you have heightened awareness. And you may be aware of somebody's feelings at a table next to you, or them being ill or sad or happy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times when I talk to people about meditation and awareness, what I say is you should take the approach of moving inwards, but also be aware of your outside. Just the same way you would take a deep breath in and then exhale. That inward is literally looking in, but be aware of your surroundings as well and just move that focus. And that's how you gain a deeper awareness. But we only have a few minutes left. And I just want to leave the floor to you. What do you have going on?
Well, I just thought of something interesting or ironic. um, I found a harmonica doing some cleaning here at our house. And
Mhm.
a harmonica, not everybody can play, but part of a harmonica is you're making sound in and out. And when people whistle, some people can whistle by whistling out, but they don't know, they can't whistle in and out. And
Right.
so to me, that when you said that about breathing and breath, I thought, wow, our ability to make sound and to hear on the inhale and the exhale is a different way of seeing how there's two different perspectives to everything that we're doing, and
Mhm.
that we can consciously control those things, by being aware of our bodies. My neurofeedback and biofeedback training has led me to be aware that, like, so when I go to the doctor, I actually don't know what my blood pressure is
Mhm.
because I have a natural ability that I know when I go in, I instantly go into calm and relax and always have low blood pressure when I'm there. and and I think it's because I know they're going to measure it, and so I even I've even like ran in and tried to be excited, and it still is low. And
Oh,
I think it's because my body instantly goes, "Mm," because I can control my respiration, I can control my blood pressure, I can control the warmth in my hands. That was part of my training. Part of my training is I had one hand hooked up with a heat, like a measuring device for, Fahrenheit, on how warm my hand was. And
mhm.
then my other hand was submerged into an ice bucket
Oh,
and for so many minutes. And I had to raise my body temperature on this hand while my other hand was submerged. And what
mm.
you learn is you don't raise your body temperature by trying. You actually raise your body temperature by succumbing and
Oh,
letting go. So the
wow.
control is in letting go, not in having control.
Oh, for sure.
It's the opposite of what we try to do, and so it's very interesting because in life we try to push and force things, and when we just let them be is often when we get more of what we're looking for.
Oh, that wonderful. That's like 100% agree with that. We need to be able to release control and
Mhm.
allow things to just be.
Yeah,
But that's all the
yeah.
time we have for today. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Andrea, for coming on and speaking to us about consciousness and hypnosis. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Have a great one.